Hello, and welcome to the video version of the Left of Greg podcast. I'm Brian Marin, the host and creator of the show. As always, I will be joined by human behavior expert Mr. Greg Williams, who the show is affectionately named after. On the show, we discuss different topics through the lenses of what we call human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. If you'd like to find out more about what that is, please check the links in the episode details and go to our website to learn more. Please don't forget to follow us on social media. The links are also in the episode details, and hit the like and subscribe button to help support our work. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Well, good morning, Greg. We are going to go ahead and get started here today. We both have a lot going on right now, and I'm about to hit a road trip. Actually, tomorrow, when see from the day we're recording this, not from the day it gets released, but I'm going to be traveling to very, very close to actually how we're starting our podcast today with a story out of Chicago.
Yeah.
And the story is about there was a couple undercover officers, some ATF officers, and a Chicago police officer doing a drug deal or something with this guy. But basically, he ended up shooting them, not fatally. They were injured.
Thank God.
And yeah, thankfully they weren't killed during this interaction, right? So don't have all the details and everything, but the reason why we're talking about it, he was subsequently arrested. And I remember just the first I heard of it when his booking photo popped up, and I was like, oh damn, this guy clearly looks like he's in trouble, and is, he had that look like I got in a little over my head. Read the backstory, and his response was, I had no idea they were police officers. I thought I was getting ripped. I thought it was another drug dealer that was going to try and steal from me, whatever the situation was. But I was like, that seems like a logical way of thinking for this guy. And
yeah,
but it brought up a point, and this, nothing to do specifically with law enforcement or anything, but just humans in general, of a way you've described it before. And you've kind of described it as, we all have sort of our own orbit of people that we're around, right? And that kind of influences us, and we influence them. And then when someone else comes in, they're kind of unknowingly coming into sort of our orbit, I guess, right? Of all of these people that are in there. So I'd love for you to kind of just explain that, what you mean by it, and then we can kind of go from there.
So Brian, it's a great way to phrase the question too. And what I'll do is I'll start at street. You go every Thursday morning into town to a local McDonald's. You get a black coffee and a cruller. You sit there for 15 minutes before you go to work, but you only do it on Thursday because they get the senior citizen discount or whatever. And the counter person, Madge, you know her by sight, you know her by her name tag. She doesn't know your name, but I mean, you're civil and cordial, right? And when you sit down, the young guy that comes by that is wiping off the tables, you always say hi to him. Hey, how's whatever, because he's got a basketball team shirt on, and you always ask about that, And then you go out and you perpetrate a quadruple homicide. And the news comes because, they want to know where you just came from. And they talk and they go, oh my God, he was the nicest guy. He sat right over there every Thursday and had a coffee. Yep. They have no idea what goes on in your orbit, and they're part of the killers or the serial killer's orbit, right? But those geospatial relationships never coexist in the same plane at the same time. So it's another way of looking at the gift of time and distance. If you're laying on your back and you got a piece of straw in your mouth and you're gazing up at the sky, remember that each one of those solar systems comprise of planets, and each one of those planets has planetoids or moons that go around it. And each one of those has gravity, and they influence things around them. So just because you're on a different planet doesn't mean you're not influenced at the tides on my planet. But we don't look at it that way, because 25 or 50 years ago, there was the Good Sam Club. And when a Winnebago went by and they saw you broken down, they'd pull over at the side of the road and help you.
Right.
25 years ago, right? If you had a paramedic or a CPR bumper sticker on your car and you didn't stop, you would violate the Good Samaritan law, or be protected by it, depending on which side of the coin you were on, for not stopping and rendering aid. The question is, in this situation, the specific situation you brought up in Chicago, the guy's orbit that they went to arrest included daily threats with guns from other persons in his orbit. He had been robbed and perhaps been shot, or at least shot at and threatened with bodily harm. So now these cops, my question would be, and nobody ever wants a cop shot, but my question would be, Brian, did they anticipate the geospatial orbit of their prey, the guy that they were going to arrest, and say it might include that plainclothes people came up to him and pulled guns? And was he ever robbed by somebody that purported to be a police? So go back factual basis. Has anybody ever executed a raid on a house just to do an armed home invasion stating they were the
Oh yeah.
police?
Yeah,
And I would
absolutely.
say it's happened thousands of
Yeah.
times. Do you see what I'm saying? Now we get this kid that his job is being a street urchin and a drug dealer, perhaps, right? And all of a sudden, these guys come up and they go, "Hey, give up the cheese," in their way, right?
Yeah.
With a
Yeah.
gun in his face. Well, we know human behavior, and we know how fast information is transmitted by the amygdala to the other cortices of the brain. Do you see what I'm saying? So, are we going to fault this inner city kid for being smarter, faster, stronger? We talk about that on the podcast every week, don't
Yeah.
we? So it applies to bad guys too. So I hope you see. I just want to hit the outer edge of the solar system on this one and say that you sometimes have to consider the influence that is pulling on you, the gravitational pull, the entropic pull of the situation. Because if you don't, Brian, one day you're going to pull over and you're going to go to render aid, and you're going to get right in a trick bag because you didn't anticipate that orbit or that sphere of influence that's already in progress.
No, and that's a good way, that sphere of influence, right? We're like, we influence others in our orbit, so to speak, and they influence
Sure.
us. They influence us, and I like the analogy of the kind of the gravitational and entropic effect, I guess,
Right.
you have on each other. And I think one of the issues too is that I'm coming from my solar system, so to speak,
Yep.
right? And if I
Yep.
drop into yours, I'm only using my solar system as as a comparative baseline to
So
yours, when
that's
in
not
fact,
scientific, is it?
but no, because
Right.
when in
Right.
fact yours might
Yeah.
be, you're a planet made of gas, where we're not. You know what I mean? So I don't
Exactly. We're
understand.
carbon based. You
Yeah,
get
I
what
don't
I'm trying to say?
the different
So
properties and
so
principles.
but you say it all the time when we're giving a brief, when we're out on the road, you say it all the time. It's baseline plus anomaly equals decision. And then you go down and you say these are the emergent ones, these are the ones that can wait a little while. Your analysis just then was unscientific if you stick, meaning you were portraying an unscientific
Yes.
analysis. If you look at the world through your glasses only, and you go, "Oh, this person's in distress." You get what I'm trying to say? And I'll give you a perfect example. Our parents had traveled all the way from Detroit Metro via car all the way to Gunnison Metro, right? Where Uber is goober with the little umlauts above the U. And along the way, let's say that they decided to pull off the road and check their map on the hood of their car in a big lot store parking lot, because we all know that they're by major
Yeah.
intersections and
Intersection.
thoroughfares.
Oh,
So
yes.
who else
Yeah.
pulls off the road at those big parking lots? That's where every drug deal is made. That's
Yeah.
where every
Every
human
Walmart parking
trafficking.
lot, right?
Oh my God! So check the tape, and you'll see every serial killer in historical perspective since Dillinger, right? And the Lady in Red stopped in at one of those places before they did something. And so what I'm trying to say is, you're sitting there planning your rest of the day based on the patterns that you have etched in your dream catcher of a life. And now all of a sudden you see or feel something. Like, it can be something where you saw somebody that looked confused and you want to go, "Hey, can I help you?" We've done that before, right? I mean, where you see somebody, they're out of their element just momentarily. And what it is they're waiting for this guy that's showing up, and the cops are in the car next door, and the guy's going, "Hey, some big guy with a brown trench coat's coming up." You see what I'm trying to say? We don't know what we're part of. So my question to you is that, with the advent of instant communications, do we need to be that guy anymore? Do we need to be that human, that boy or girl or man or woman that gets involved with it? Or is there an imperative now, a social imperative, let's call it, that says we can phone it in? Remember when phone it in was an insult? That guy's an oxygen
Yeah.
thief. He's just
He's
sitting at his
just
desk
phoning
phoning
it
it
in.
in,
No,
right?
and you're right. I get what you mean. In this case, you mean, being a good witness versus
Right?
being an active participant in something.
That's a
And
perfect way of putting it.
that's a huge distinction, because you hit up, well, okay, you hit up on a few things here. One, you said some of the ways that we think and act and respond to these different situations are may be, I would say this, would they may be outdated due to the speed of communication. Meaning, is it necessary
I
now?
think it's a factual statement. right?
Is it necessary now to have that type of mindset or idea of, hey, I'm going to go in and do something about this because we have instant communication now and we have the ability to enlist the aid of others
Right.
or get help from somewhere or call the professional, like you said, everything from a broken down vehicle to I'm witnessing
Yeah.
some type of crime, like each one of
Right.
those things. Now that, even just 10 years ago, the difference in how quickly someone can be the right person, the information can get to the right person at the right time, and then they can respond with that is I mean, that's increased exponentially. So I would say even the difference between today and 10 years ago is huge. So that
Yes, I
kind
agree.
of a lot to unpack with that, especially with your analogy now, because now I'm going in my head of all the other different things that the different ways we could describe that in terms of human interaction and how it works, just understanding physics
Right.
and literally how humans interact. But what this is let's start with good witness versus active participant. Let's start
Yes.
there, meaning what does that mean, right? Because we all want to be the good Samaritan that helps out or
Yes.
helps a person in distress, or can be the hero in the movie or do whatever, and that's good. It's because we're freaking human beings, and at a very primal level, we do want the survival of not just ourselves but of the species. So therefore, when we see people in need, we generally even you can see, like, you get the guy who gets arrested because he was like a four-time felon, but he was pulling a guy out of a burning car. You know what I'm saying? Like
Exactly.
there's a sociological drive there to help that individual. So even if that person is a criminal or whatever, they're willing to do that. And I bring that up because it's a very primal instinct humans have to want
No,
to
it's
want to do that.
absolutely.
But now
Why?
if we're
Why?
talking,
Because it's a survival instinct.
yeah, exactly. And so, but if we're talking about, where do we draw the line here with I'm going to stand here and be a good witness versus I'm going to be an active participant? You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind
Right.
of
So
we without diving into a specific case, or drawing and delineating different levels of, this is where you can sit there and continue to watch. This is where you call someone. This is where you get involved. Like it's a very, I mean, there's a lot of complexity in there, right? I mean, there's a lot of
yeah,
uncertainty.
but listen, science is not absolute, and somebody right now is going to jump on that. There's absolute zero. There's things that we're absolutely certain of. We understand the difference and can calculate it to the nanometer when we're talking about Celsius to Fahrenheit, or when we're talking specific gravity or amounts of pressure. But it wasn't that long ago that we thought the Earth was flat. Do you get what I'm trying to say? It wasn't that long ago that we thought that the solar system spun around us. So that's why I'm saying that science isn't absolute. Science learns and adapts and changes, right? So we have to learn and adapt and change with it. So what I'll do is I'll use your example of Chicago, and it's a perfect one, Brian. Let's say that you're a concealed carry holder, okay?
Okay.
And you're about to walk into your apartment, condo, local gas station, and you see a couple of guys in hoodies. You get what I'm trying to say? And they're jumping over a thing and running at another guy in the parking lot and go, don't move, don't move. And they've got their guns out and everything else. You go, holy shit, I've seen a robbery before, and this looks a
Yeah.
lot like a robbery, or it
Right.
might be a homicide. So you pull out your weapon, and now guess what? You're no longer that witness, are you? Now you're an active participant. And because time is fleeting and because distance changes your proxemic view of the situation, you're not sure if these guys are two coppers or if they're going to kill this guy. And you want to do the right thing, but you're doing the mental, should I stay or should I go? Now, what I want to do is go one ring out from that. So we've got
Yeah.
the inner ring, it's the guy they're arresting. We got the next ring, it's the two guys that are arresting that guy. We've got the third ring, which is the Good Samaritan. The unknown fourth ring is four guys with raid vests in a van, and
Right.
one of them is going to hit you over the head with a sledgehammer, Good Samaritan, because they think you're there to kill the cop. They think you're a guardian angel for the dope dealer. What I'm saying is complex situations, ambiguous environments require that extra couple of seconds sometimes of processing, and sometimes doing yourself a favor by giving yourself that gift of time and distance. And listen, if somebody's beating somebody to death with a claw hammer, feel free to step in. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But we're not talking about that anymore, are we? We're talking about a situation where communication again is instantaneous. You can record, and what's my favorite saying? If you can record it, you can stop it. You can intervene and stop it, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know, Brian. I think that that we're in an age now where there's such a fine line between, and the other thing is, how qualified are you? So if you call paramedics are certainly more qualified
Yes.
than I am at
Yeah.
emergency medicine, right?
Yeah.
And if I call the cops, I'm certainly hoping that I'm in a jurisdiction where it's not, Green Acres is the place to be. You got Eb that comes up and says, I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, I'm hoping, but we also know that with 18,000 police departments in the United States, we might be in one of those jurisdictions. Hey,
No.
I sent you that one just a day ago of the guy that was killing people like it was free. He killed those two people at the gas station, went over and shot the person as he was leaving the gas station, went to the next gas station, and it happened to be an off-duty cop that was armed, and
Yeah.
he stopped the situation. But guess what, Brian? He was shot too. He shot and killed the
Well,
threat, but he was shot too.
the
Come
and
on.
this is the thing you brought up, the concealed carry and people
Yeah.
who want to intervene. And again, I'm not bashing anyone for doing that, of
No.
course. But it's understanding everything you just said. Is we don't take into
Right.
account, though, those spirals that could potentially come from that. So like you said, they're good Samaritan, want to do something, and oh, hey, now I've got this tool on me, on my bat belt here, and I've been going to the range, and these guys have been showing me this really cool stuff and
Yep.
how to do it. I want to go do it now, and which
Yep.
is part of it. But I think knowing what happens after that is you're now a contributing factor to everything that comes from that situation. Meaning you stepping in, you intervening, you are now assuming responsibilities that you may not have thought
Absolutely.
about when you were seeing this situation. And I think that's really important, because when these different situations occur, you're only thinking in those nanoseconds that are playing
Binary
out,
too.
right. Well, yeah, you're thinking binary, absolutely.
Yep.
It's the classic, is it a threat or not a threat? Like, fuck, I
It's
don't know. There's a range of
Yeah,
options in
yeah, but
between
they
there,
didn't
by
give
the
you
way.
that because tick, 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 tick. That's what I'm saying. No, you're
no
right
one
on.
no one ever
Yeah.
does that.
Yep.
But the idea is, not knowing, you're only thinking in that moment. So you're thinking in nanoseconds, in those moments, in those split
Yep.
seconds, because that's what you think it really is, when it's not. It's a series of spirals, right? So the, like, we've said before, the line between A and B is a series of circles or spirals, right? It's not a
Absolutely.
straight line. And so when you interact with that, right, when I push into that orbit, right, when I push into your gravitational pull, it affects me and I affect it, and therefore I am now part of that situation and partly responsible, right? And you can come up with all these different scenarios of, well, you see this, and it's like, yeah, but people always come up with a scenario that's so blatantly obvious that
Yes.
it's great. No, you like you said, like, you send a person pounding someone over the head with a hammer, like,
Exactly.
clearly. But what we're talking about is there, but those situations rarely occur. It's always something ambiguous.
Rarely.
And so if
Yes.
I go
Yes.
walking into that and I am place myself in there, I am now a contributing factor to everything, and therefore partly responsible for everything that happens after that. We don't take that in consideration at the time.
We don't, because we can't, because your survival chemistry, your electrochemical neurotransmitters are set up to defend you. They're not set up to defend the third person in the group that's with you in the limo. So it's counterintuitive to be a security guard or a presidential entourage security, because you're committed to protecting another. Now,
Mm-hmm.
listen. If you're standing in the line with your wife and your kids, of course, that group, tribal, safety, security mentality is going to take over. But I mean, when you're in the moment with other folks, first biggest lie that we were sold, Brian, second to Maslow's, or first to Maslow's, I guess it would be, is proxemics. Because I
Right.
absolutely believe in proxemic indicators. I
Yes.
absolutely do. But they change so drastically with the situation that if you don't orient them and specifically assign them to the situation, which is ever changing, that you're in, then you're wrong. So we look online, and what do we find? We find this is the interpersonal zone. And when somebody
Yeah.
does
When
it,
you're standing
shut
within
up.
2 feet of
I-
someone, it's
okay,
like, okay.
okay, so here, let me give you one why that's a lie. We're in Iraq or Afghanistan, and we still got haircuts because we're servicemen or ex-servicemen or former servicemen that are working on contracts, and we have to have a certain appearance. Take deltas and seals out of it. What I'm saying is that there was times that we had our haircut, and we had our haircut by a person that was indigenous to the area that we
Yep.
were in, that was the war zone, that stood behind us where we couldn't see them with a sharp pair of scissors and a razor. And we sat there and relaxed talking to our friends while we were at the barber. Show me where that is in proxemics, Brian. And the mother baby with the oxytocin, and then the girlfriend where she's sitting in the middle seat of the pickup truck. It doesn't take into account those situations. Why am I bringing that up? Because when your orbit is going around, it's this same orbit. Pattern recognition and analysis means that you repeat patterns, or it wouldn't be a science, right?
Right.
And let's say that mine's the size of a beach ball, and yours is 4 feet in diameter. Mine's only 2 feet in diameter. What I don't know is because parts of that orbit that I exude are invisible, Brian. They're invisible to
Right.
the naked eye.
Hmm.
I can influence you. I had a situation, and I can't be very specific about it because I live here, but I had a situation where very recently we were in an office waiting for something, and the person that came in either worked at a marijuana dispensary or was in fact a marijuana dispensary, if you know what I'm trying to say. And the overpowering smell of hemp and the kind green bud was such that it was like, oh my God, I'm getting a contact high just from the odor. Now,
So did you thank him?
no, but I should have. I
I
feel
would have.
bad now. I'm recalcitrant in that matter. But the idea is that you're exuding the Pepe Le Pew, and you don't
Yeah.
think about it because you're so close. The roof tower,
Right.
you don't know it. Okay,
Yeah.
so think of that term in like for example, have you ever seen somebody and they give off that vibe? When I go into that mode, when I'm going to take action, I switch from normal Greg the big huggy teddy bear happy bear to mission focus.
Yep.
Oh crap, it's about to come. You've seen it.
Yep.
Other people seen it. I don't notice it. And then all of a sudden, what happens, Brian, is that starts spreading through the crowd, and people that know
Yeah.
me,
No, then I
you,
see it.
Shelly,
Now I'm
Eric,
in it.
right?
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, so that's influence, right? I don't
Well,
know that I'm
that's a
exuding that,
perfect
and
thing.
that
Is that
fixes it changes your orbit.
well, that's a perfect of how the example of how those relationships happen,
Yep,
because then I see you click into that, and what do I
yep.
immediately do? Now I'm in it because I'm like, shit, Greg's on something. I don't know what it is,
and and
but
and and
something's
I
about to
can't
happen.
communicate because I'm going, woof, woof, woof. You know me, I'm a pointer, not Bob Pointer. Bob, we love you, by the way. But I'm a pointer, a point setter. I'm sitting and pointing. Uh, but that's a perfect analogy, isn't it? I mean, so imagine yourself in the same situation in Chicago, because that's sort of a central focus point of what we're talking about
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
And here this guy's getting out of his car. And I'll tell you, from doing thousands of hours of surveillance and
yeah,
testifying in courts against people, that the person will say, I've never seen that man before in my life. And I'll say, Your Honor, I ate breakfast with this guy. I followed him
yeah,
here. I did.
yeah,
And I'll show hours of footage of me being
yeah.
with the guy. People don't look around. They're not situational aware. That's why we'll never be out of a job. So this guy is more situational aware than others. This guy that shot these coppers. Why? Because it's part of the survival lexicon of his life. It's part of
Yes.
the gosh damn fabric of how he operates in his version of what we used to call the hood, right? So
Hmm.
if you and I were sitting in a car and we were driving to training, and we saw him getting out of the car, we would have immediately assigned him to our baseline and said, this is anomalous behavior above the baseline. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Then all of a sudden, if we saw those guys moving up on him out of our periph, we would have stopped and oriented and said, this is about to be a hit. Turn the volume down, take a look at it. Now you're that guy with the concealed carrier. You're somebody else. My thing is, Brian, sometimes covering concealment, taking out your phone and saying, hey, I'm not sure this is anything. How many times have we called 911? We start that exact way. I'm not sure if this is anything, but I see this guy with a gun and he's moving in on this guy in a parking lot at the empty arms apartments or whatever. The idea is that I guess the core of my thing to you today is that that's my question. Is it now different with instantaneous communication? Is it now better to be an informed witness from cover than it is to intervene in almost every situation?
And I think that's the core kind of central question, is because of that has changed. So, great point. We brought up a whole bunch of examples of how quickly we get to that survival mode, whether it's that
Yes.
individual in that neighborhood where that's their whole life actually, or us in those situations, or in any of these things where you're very, very primitive level of
Yes.
thinking and acting. And unless you've trained in specific things to react, you're still reacting. But unless you have some sort of training that allows that, you're not going to know necessarily what to do, how to process it. Because you even said, in ambiguous environments require, you said time to understand. I would say, and
And
which is
and
true, but
distance.
it's just it's an ability to sense, make, and problem solve, right?
It's a level of human performance that eludes most humans,
I
right? Would we say
think
that? I think without training,
it's
most
very
human beings
easy,
miss it.
but even with training, you're only going to do what you specifically trained to do. And I think what
Yeah.
people forget too is why we're bringing this stuff up. You talk about like I'm the concealed carry holster. I see something happening and I want to go
Yep.
respond. Um, in all of these situations, every single one, whether it's the story I talked about at the beginning with the police officers and going to do a dope deal or whatever,
Yep.
or it's the concealed carry or whatever, you see something going on. What people forget, even people who do that stuff for a living, is you're at the absolute limit of human performance,
You're at,
cognitive performance. I don't give a
yes.
shit what what your workout time is for whatever workout and how many yards you can drag a dummy for and then sprint.
Yep.
It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual cognitive performance.
Yep.
You are at the very, 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 very limit. So people who have trained really well for specific situations will fall back on those neural pathways that they've created through training and have a response for that given context and situation.
Right.
It will hit, but now you're still just stuck in the groove on the record. You're not still not thinking through the situation. You're simply relying on what you have. So that taking that pause, that breath, that increasing that sense making, going, what other spirals could likely come from this situation? What else
And
could
that doesn't take that long when you're trained for it. Go
well,
back 1 inch, go
yeah,
back 1 inch just before we made those comments. Now you're that person and you're at literally at the penultimate point of your human performance. So you're being tasked in so many different ways. All your chemicals, all the electric synapses, everything that's firing, your muscles are straining, your body is preparing for impact in case you got to fight. Now your biases step in. Now cognitive dissonance steps in. Now all of a sudden your human emotions of empathy step in. Brian, those take time. They're not instantaneous. Even a parasympathetic reflex has a time element
yes,
associated
yeah,
with it.
right,
Yes. Okay.
yeah,
So my thing is that if you're going to say I'm going to physiologically take time anyway in this situation, why not enhance that by saying, I'm going to give myself the gift of time and distance from cover to make a better informed decision. And I'm saying that to first responder, coppers, mom, human resources. You brought up something that was so important a minute ago about why training. I'll tell you right now, if you want to assess training, go around the world and take a look at training. It's one of two things that are going to be more pervasive than anything. One, Stevie Wonder could solve the scenario that you've
yeah.
got. It's so simple and it's so ridiculous. Or it's such a convoluted Rube Goldberg mess. Okay, Brian, I want you to put your Glock in your mouth and I want you to swing across to that other thing and then cut the rope and drop down in between. And they'll
Right.
have rice sacks over their head. Okay, why do we do that? One, we want to show somebody the limit of their stuff and say, oh, so there, right? That's our answer with that one. That's the rice bag over the head and swinging from the thing. Or we want to make it repeatable so we know what the results are going to be. And we've already worked it out for safety and timing and directions and left and lateral limits. Well, our brain doesn't work on left and right lateral limits or limit of advance. Our brain works on novelty and nuance
Yes.
and those influences that come up. Sometimes one is more tantalizing than the other. I'll give you a perfect example of that. If you're a human male, the Coolidge effect steps in and you see the female by the side of the road and you want to pull up and see if she's okay. That's a thing, Brian, that's been hardwired, and nature
Right.
and nurture both screw us on it. So we have to be careful when we go into a situation. We think that we're beginning at A and going to Z. Sometimes the situation is at P. There's already things that have occurred that we don't know about
Well,
that we can't unring, and
yeah.
we're going to step into the trick bag unknowingly. That's all I'm saying.
Well, your alphabet one is perfect because that's a perfect example. We go from A to Z on the alphabet because
Yep,
that's how we're taught to memorize it.
yep.
There is no reason for any of those letters to be in that order.
That's
I
true.
mean,
That's absolutely true.
sorry to
Not by frequency, right?
well,
Frequency of use,
I
not by,
mean,
yep,
that's a perfect example because the
yep.
alphabet is, A, B, C, D. We learn how
Yep.
to memorize it, but
Arbitrary and
there's
capricious.
complete, yep, it's
Yeah,
completely arbitrary reason why they're in that order.
yep.
It
Totally
actually
agree.
makes no sense. There's no purpose behind it. It's just someone came up with that way to do it.
Yep.
Once you realize
I,
that,
I think they came up with that order because it fit the song. I
Well,
might be wrong on that one, Brian.
yeah,
You know?
it may be
Right?
because there's literally no reason for it to be in any sort of order like that. I
No.
mean, I don't we're just so conditioned to it because that's how we learned it. But you can guess what? You can go A and R and then T and then Z, but that's chaos to us and we don't
Yep.
like that. We like
Yep.
order, right? And we have to make order out of chaos, and that's what we're talking about in these situations.
Yep.
It's taking that alphabet and creating what words am I seeing? If I'm seeing 26 indicators or novel things in my environment and I'm juggling those, I have to put order to them. So I'm going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But that's not how it works. I have to be able
That
to go
is
from
not.
A to L, then back to C, then all the way to Z, and then know how that fits in a field. And you know you go back to intervening or seeing something. I mean, that's and what training will get you and what it won't get you. It
Yes.
is not, it will not give you every answer. Your
No.
The idea should be, the training should be universal enough to give fundamentals of a procedure or a thought process or some mechanical response to allow you, right, if I have a conditioned response,
Yes.
then during that conditioned response, because I can do it, basically autonomically without thinking about it,
Yes.
um, I can then, that frees me up to think about the situation, right?
Yep.
Meaning, if you gave like the Secret Service kind of protection example, right? If I have that autonomic response of I hear something, or and then I turn and face, or I get in front of my
Yep. The
protectee and
orientation. Yep.
draw my weapon, because that's conditioned, that whole time I'm doing that, I'm free to think. Now, if I don't have that training, I have to think about what to do in the moment, which is going to blow because you're never going to come up with a good thing, good
Right.
decision
Right.
right then and there. But that's the idea. If I haven't built that stuff in, so I can do the same thing with some a way of thinking or processing my environment. And to go back to that, gas station example is a perfect one, right? When I'm filling up with gas, what are we doing? We're
Yes.
walking that W, looking around the whole entire
Constantly.
time,
The
because
entire
it
time.
gas, once again, I have to constantly remind people, and shout out to Dr. Carlos if you're
Yep.
listening, because he's always posting stuff on his Instagram with gas station stuff, because and he always tags us, because it's like, hey, listen to these guys, they're always telling you the most dangerous place in the world is a flipping gas station, and everyone's posting all these videos, this crazy crap that happens at gas stations, yet no one
Yep.
takes the time to literally walk a W on the ground and look around the whole entire time. Well, because I automatically do that, like I do it without thinking about it. So I'm filling up with gas, talking to my wife who's in the car, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even know that I was still walking around, moving the entire
Exactly.
time I was talking to her." That's the point, because that allows me to actually, now I free up my attention for anything novel that's in my environment. Is that like you see?
Absolutely. So listen, go back a minute, and folks, if you're listening, let's street this up for you. Automatic versus autonomic.
Yeah,
Both are internal cues, triggers that your physiology and sociological and psychological brain respond to. And I'll give you an example of it. Autonomic, blinking, swallowing, breathing, inhale, exhale. Okay, those are functions that are taken care of by parts of your brain where it requires zero conscious thought. Now, automatic is very close to that.
yeah,
But automatic is all of a sudden you rest your hand on the stove accidentally, not knowing that it was hot. It's one of those,
yeah,
forever stoves that looks like it's fine. Ooh, and you withdraw when you got too hot, or something's really cold and you withdraw to it. Now, and I'm not just talking about temperature, but temperature is a good way of thinking of those things. Those are the type. And I'll give you another automatic one. We flinch when we
mm-hmm.
hear
A
something
startle
that's very
response.
loud.
Yeah,
So I would challenge everybody that's listening or watching this morning. I would challenge you to go to the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. You had Ronald Reagan surrounded by the most highly trained personal protection specialists in the world. And a guy with a 22 starts capping rounds. Everybody, for that first few seconds, Brian, was looking at the sound and flinching and responding to Brady getting shot, and then trying to, oh shit, the door's closed. Do we get Reagan in? What do we do? It was absolute pandemonium. Okay. And everybody will say, no, this is a perfect example of how to get them horse crap. Okay. Look at that. We all do that. So you're expecting to operate at peak performance in a situation that defies human logic. It defies the
you,
types of things that we see in our environment. If you were talking about 10,000 years ago and I'm
yeah,
being chased by everything in my environment, or for those people that have to deal with Third Marine in Hawaii, There's a perfect example. Banana spiders, the gosh damn wild pigs, and all that stuff
Yeah.
that they have to deal with in their environment. Centipedes that bite and leave a welt. But listen, Brian, survival is overrated because we've abandoned it because we can say, I'll have a number three in a clown's mouth. You see what I'm saying? So life is too simple. So if you think that just because you have trained for this environment because you went to a concealed carry for how many ever hours, and you think, or you went to a
Yeah.
guy and he did a couple of scenarios, you
Yeah.
think you're going to be able to figure it out. What happens is you don't know where you're getting dropped into this. Okay, and it could be mission impossible. And if you're overwhelmed, all you're adding to is the weight of those cops. Now
Well,
they got to consider you, the weight of the emergency services, or you're going to kill the wrong person. And we've
and
seen
then,
that happen in Arvada, right?
right. So then what are we supposed to do? Because that's a question, is that, okay,
I
now I
think
am
it
that
is, yeah.
guy, is a concealed carry or whatever the situation is, everyone, because
Even
I
a
don't want,
helpful parent or
I
a,
don't
yep,
want it to sound like we're just bashing that and saying it's not,
yep,
it's not necessary. It's very, very necessary for all of that, but it only provides you with a very, very narrow bandwidth of options or things to do or to consider, right? There's well,
yes,
there are a not there it's a finite number of things that could potentially happen to you, but those things are based so much on the context that you're in that you cannot ever prepare for every possible scenario, but you don't need to, right? I need to have a very
no, 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 no.
I
And
have
we
a
never
set
say that you can.
I have a set
Exactly.
of certain things that I'm going to do, right, in certain situations. But then what rather than trying to come up with all these different crazy things to think about, it's just get really, really good at these few things, and then conceptualize that into other
Yes,
domains. Okay, how would that work, that same process work
yes.
in this situation? How would that same
The
process work in
architecture
that
is
situation?
sound.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's throw this at you. And folks, there's times that we're moving fast and loose. All you got to do is like tune into the news to look up some of these stories on your own and do an independent study. Do your homework. So there was a caper just a little while ago. Husband and wife celebrating either their wedding or their wedding anniversary or their engagement or whatever, sitting at one end of a bar. A guy keeping to himself is sitting at the other. At some point, that guy pulls out a gun, shoots both of them, has never met them before, doesn't know them from Adam, then shoots himself at the bar. And the article started out saying there is no way in the world that you could have predicted it. Okay, guy with a gun inside a bar. Then the next fact that came out is the guy's a prior convicted felon. Then the next thing is the guy's out on bond or parole or something else like this.
But
Then
they
the
don't,
next thing he's
all those
go
things are
ahead.
great, but like you don't know that sitting in the
No, no,
bar.
no. But wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm getting somewhere.
Okay.
Okay. The next thing is that this guy's acting hinky, and everybody's going, "Hey, I'm wondering if this guy is overserved or what's wrong with him, or he's having a problem." And then these other people are having a ball. Look, you have to consider that when you go into a bar, which is a public place, that there might be a predator operating in there. Maybe it's a pedophile or a sexual predator, or maybe it's a robbery that's happening. And if you're not paying attention to your 2, 5, and 10s around you, you could be a victim. Second thing is, if you're going into a public place that allows other people to have weapon and nobody patted this guy down and said, "Hey, what's with the gun, son?" Do you get what I'm saying? And saying took it away from him. The other thing is, if you're in a bar and this guy's drinking and he's introspecting and he's talking to himself and he's sweating and they, all these things that they listed in the thing that the guy did before he pulled out his gun. The other thing is, when a person pulls out a gun in a bar, he's not going to say, "And bang, they're off. Let's go for a foot chase, and I'll buy you the next round of drinks." So all of those things are things that we can start putting together, Brian. And if we train our brain to say, when this guy starts coming up with that gun and he's standing up, now the clock starts, Brian. Let's see, gravity works, drop down behind the bar, start running, screaming. Anytime you think that you're in a situation, you need to tell somebody. And if you're in a public place, you need to say, "I'm scared. I think this
Well, but
person is going to hurt me. I'm going to do these things,
that's kind of, again, that's kind of like given after the fact. It's easy to see all those things, but when you're in that moment and you're walking in, what am this is the issue with all of these cases, is
Yep,
everyone, people typically train or prepare for certain events or things in their life, and ours is always, we talk about that situation. I mean, but here's the thing: you always tell people, "Oh, you're going out to dinner, you're going out to a restaurant or a
yep,
bar with your family, practice the
yep.
Heimlich maneuver because you're more likely
Absolutely.
to come across
That's
someone who's
much
choking."
more likely.
But in these situations, like you can't, you don't know, that's all of that's hard to see. If I'm just sitting here walking in a place, I might not even have ever seen the guy coming in there. So I don't want it to sound like, oh, this is so obvious, because it's often not.
No, 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 no. And we're not saying that. It's the subtle cues that differentiate a situation from lethality to normality. It's always subtle cues, but the cues add up. And Brian, you have to pay attention to that. If you're going to listen, a police officer gets out of their vehicle to go in and have lunch. They leave their flashlight, their PR-24, their SAP gloves, whatever cops carry now, in the car. Then they go in and they sit down and they're surrounded by people that are carrying knives and forks. And guess what they do? They tune out. Now, how many times have we seen coppers get killed in that exact situation? You failed to anticipate the danger in the situation and that you're influencing somebody else's orbit. Now, unknown, and I don't care what the person's motive was, but intent is a thing that you can establish by watching people. If the person is taking on a predatory look, look, there's going to be a situation that happens when you walk out of a bar one night, headed to your car, and you get hit by a meteor, and you're dead. Those are things you can't anticipate, but you can certainly anticipate those things in your immediate surroundings that could signal danger. And all I'm saying is that when I sit there and I knowingly say, I'm going to stay here anyway, even though I see certain cues in my
Well,
environment, read the
that's
world.
the you know that's one of the major issues. Hey, when someone after these events, they go, "Well, I knew something was up," and it's like, well, and this is why if I'm just listening to this podcast, going like,
Yeah.
"Great, I can't. What am I supposed to do?" I mean, because that's the thing is that, and it's why I always tell people, it's trust your gut,
Yes.
trust your instincts in those situations, because you don't know what that person has in their orbit, right? And that's why
Yep.
I go back to always the gas station examples are always perfect, because you don't know what the person who pulls up next to you and is filling up gas, they might be a wanted felon on the run right
Yes.
there at that time, and you're sitting there going like, oh, hey, did you need did you need the brush to clean your windshield here? You know what I mean? Like, I
Exactly.
mean, so that's what it is, but it's then not remaining, not being hyper vigilant about it. But
Right, right. But you can't be, listen, you can't be ostrich and you can't be hyper vigilant. But what I'm saying is sense making and sampling your environment constantly. What's changed in the last couple of minutes when I'm at Applebee's? You get what I'm trying to say? Has there been an atmospheric shift? Certainly, this guy around his orbit had an atmospheric shift occur because people talked about it. They just didn't know how to name it in the moment. And my thing is that if you linger, look, if you're going to shoot me, you're going to shoot me in the ass because I'm going to be getting out of there. And if I start sensing my hinky buttons going off, like you said, Brian, that your instincts are telling you that something has changed in the environment, sometimes you got to vote with your feet. People stay too long and then they become a victim of a situation that rapidly exceeds their level of human performance. And I'm not saying to be hyper vigilant, and I'm not saying to let the bad guys win and not going to get the bloomin' onion tonight. I'm just saying make sure that you're alert and aware of nuanced changes in and around your environment. The big ones we'll all see, Brian. The big ones we'll all see and sense.
well, I
I'm talking
mean,
about the little ones.
it, people miss the big ones too.
Oh, no, no, no,
But
you're right. But I
but
mean, the average human being, if they're alert and aware of their surroundings without training, will see some of those things occur.
well, and I want to go back to kind of being a good witness versus an active participant,
Sure.
and then the speed of communication on this, because I think that's a big factor now today that we didn't have 10-20 years ago, right? meaning
Absolutely.
meaning the actual speed of communication and being able to I don't know. I'm a big fan of letting experts do what they're supposed to do, or letting people who are
Yes.
hired to dictate search situations, let them do it versus getting involved. And because I always go back to that same situation. Here's my issue with some of the stuff you just said. It's not an issue. It's just I just said you're responsible for everything that happens if you get involved, and then you just said, well, you have to see this and maybe you have to say something to that individual. So it's like, well, wait a minute, if I'm sitting here listening to this going, wait a minute, you're telling me don't get involved if I don't have to, but then if I'm at a restaurant, I need to say something, get involved. Like it can be confusing, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't I just want
Okay.
to
So,
clear
so
that
here's
up
the
with
thing we
people.
don't
And,
want to
but
do.
Greg, it goes back
Yeah.
to the orbit, the whole purpose of the conversation,
Precisely.
right? um you're sitting at that restaurant with your family, and someone's sitting alone and eating alone in a restaurant. Well, that in and of itself means nothing, but when coupled with other things, because what's normal behavior at a restaurant, typically people go
Yep.
and eat with other people, or they sit at the bar and have a drink and eat if they're by themselves, or what I mean. So one, it's just in and of itself means absolutely nothing. But when coupled with now that food's been sitting in front of that person and they haven't touched it,
Yep.
right? Now the physiological signs of stress or anger or mission focus, right? Now that
Yep.
starts to add in. So it's those types of things that I think allow those nuanced situations for you to be able to identify those subtle nuances in the environment. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
it's taking each one of those things and balancing it against the context of what you're
it is
viewing.
though. But there's three basic choices. Okay. The basic choice is to be a good witness, which is always a great choice because you can do that from cover and concealment and call an expert. That's always the advantageous situation. Brian, if somebody's trying to carjack you and take your car, it's a property crime.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the same line of thinking of being a witness. The second thing is you're going to get actively involved. Okay. You're going to get sucked into the orbit of that situation because you think that you've got to take an action. And
And
I'm
once
telling
you're
you,
in,
if you choose it, you're reaping the whirlwind because you take everything, the vacuum that's created around that orbit too, and all the things that go with it. But there's a third choice, Brian. The third choice is to not pay attention and be a body count, to be a victim, to just
right.
sit there and keep yelling and laughing and have somebody walk up to you in a nightclub and shoot you in the head. So clearly the third choice is the least advantageous and the
Right.
one that I would say no.
Don't do
And
that.
I'm telling you the first two choices are two sides of the same coin, and that's why it gets sticky. That's why we're talking about it today. That's why experts are writing books about it, and that's why these self-proclaimed prophets of security make all this money. Listen, when you go and you're dancing around a campfire in the rain, learning Krav Maga with a bunch of other people, that's not because you want to learn Krav Maga. That's because you're shit scared of living in your apartment and going out to your car and you're fearful of getting robbed. Listen, folks, don't stop doing that. If it's making you happy, go ahead and do that. But having a plan before you go in that includes the Heimlich, but also includes your 2, 5, and 10 looking around you, and also includes getting out of there when the barometric pressure changes suddenly. Those, Brian, that's good advice. That's good advice anywhere. You have to be responsible for your personal safety, and your orbit extends further than you know. And sometimes when somebody walks by, that could be just the people or person that the police are looking for, and paying a little time. I'll give you one quick story. So we meet our friend Roger at the local Walmart the other day. Shelly and I are going in. We just got to grab something. Roger's worked there since Christ was a carpenter. And so while we're talking to him, he looks in and sees something I don't, and reaches into a shelf and pulls out an empty 6-pack of Bic lighters. And he goes, "My third one today." Somebody's shoplifting those lighters because weed is free now, right? And all they were doing is hiding and discarding the garbage and sneaking out with the lighters. And you're thinking to me, okay, it's 6 lighters. What is that? A couple of bucks? You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
You're thinking, hey, it's shoplifting. What's the big deal? Roger's thinking, hey, it's more shit I got to clean up on and
Yep.
write up an extra SKU. I'm telling you, if that's going on in the store, what else is going on in the store? Cautionary tale, Brian. Cautionary tale, because it might be the buck knife next time. It might be the whatever next time. You just got to have, and we both know that there's certain places in our environment that they don't give a shit about your security. They give a damn about your bottom dollar, making a profit. So you're responsible for your own personal safety when you go somewhere, and there is a current and an atmosphere that's going on that you don't know about. And if you don't tune into it sometimes, you could be a victim.
Well, that's the that's the other part about getting involved, is you're walking into a situation and you don't know what else
Yep.
is occurred or happened or what's going. I mean, that ties it right back to your story, or the example of you're a concealed carry holder and you see
Yep.
two people chasing another guy, and now it's in, you're only seeing it from your perspective, and you get sucked in to that orbit, and then now you're part of that. You're now part of that situation and everything that comes from it, right? I mean,
Yes.
so you there's ways to get involved without getting involved, right? Like you talk about calling someone
Yes.
or taking literally just looking around the situation. And it reminded me of when you were telling that story of something we had. It was out here. It was in front of my buddy's business. And I was waiting around for something, and I looked out the window, and all I saw was a guy, and he was opening the trunk of his car. And before he did, he kind of looked left, looked right over
There you
his
go.
shoulders. And I'm like, whoa. So I immediately I had my phone out. I was like, yo, I'm going to take some photos of this. And, because I've only seen that when
Yep.
like, RPGs and AKs are coming out of that trunk.
Bad
That's the only
stuff.
time there's
Yep.
just bad shit's going to happen. Right. And so it immediately got me. I was like, whoa, who looks around before they open their trunk? Someone who doesn't want to see in. Well, me then looking or taking some photos, looking at the guy, and even look like, of course, now I'm adding to it. I'm starting to, he's got like shaved head, sunglasses on, kind of like almost like he's got that mission focused look on his
Yeah.
face, right? And he's looking around. Well, then he looked left, looked right, and he pulls out, and then he pulls out. It was clearly a box from like a bakery with like a cake in it, and he
Yeah.
was going into the Boys and Girls Club down the street because it
And you're
was
about
like
to
the
kill him,
kids.
right?
I'm like
Exactly.
ready to like go
Yep.
running at this dude with
Yep.
like a metal rod I found. But it was so close that I instantly went, "Oh crap! Here we are. The fix is in.
Yep.
Whatever this." As he's pulling it out, what did I do though? I looked around, looked right. Okay, well, he's not pulling up to a bank or
Right.
whatever. He's not pulling a long gun out of there, or there's a festival going on. And he's going to shoot the place up, right? There was
Exactly.
nothing else he could have done within that context. And as
Yes.
soon as that box came out, I noticed like, oh, that's from like a bakery type thing. And then he walked in, and there's the balloons and everything like that. And it was just like,
That's so much more about understanding situation awareness in that
right,
story than you know. And people need to tune into that. And I'll give you an example. So back in the early days, back in the remote days, we were doing some training. Myself, a guy named Ron Goss, a couple other hard-hitting coppers, and we were all in the same vehicle. And it was like a unmarked police vehicle that was used for like traffic in dropping off traffic cones or something. There was no markings whatsoever. Didn't have any specialized license plates. It just was a big vacuous vehicle that we all could climb into. And we were south of Detroit doing this training, which involved our weapons. And so we all had to take the rounds out of our weapons. In the old days, there was no simunition. There weren't any of those things. So you had to take your rounds and put it in a duffel bag. You had to have a duffel bag with your empty mags, and then you had to have an empty mag with your weapon and do the clearing. So we were coming back from this, and because standards were different back then, folks, and I'm old, everybody was reloading their Model 39s and stuff in the vehicle while it was moving, while we're headed through Detroit to go back up to Warren, Michigan. And we pull up in an intersection. Everybody's chatting about the training because the way that it is. And these are cops that have been around. They've seen it all, everything else. And Ron Goss and I are both on the right side of the card, and we glance and we see a guy up against the building. Now, folks, I'm having my arms extended like I'm being patted down by a copper, standing up with my arms on the building and my feet spread and
yep,
leaning back at like a 33-degree angle. And the guy has his hand, the second man has his hand between the shoulder blades of the guy, hold him up against the building, and is holding a claw hammer. Now, we talked about a claw hammer attack earlier, Brian. So
yeah,
both Ron and I look to the right at the same time, and we see this. And because we're in a vehicle and this is on the curb, it's 15 feet from us.
yeah.
Both of us come to the realization at the same time, and we're in a high crime area, that holy crap, this
This
guy
guy's
is
about,
doing a
yeah,
robbery
yeah.
right here, right in front of us, and everything else. Now, knowing to be the expert in gift of time and distance, I go, Goss, hold on, what's up? And everybody now orients. So you've got like 6 armed guys that just came from shooting training in a car 15 feet from this guy. And what it was is we all noticed at about the same time that the guy's got these nails in his mouth, number eights, and it's a 5/8 inch piece of plywood. And they're 2 carpenters. There was a robbery at the store, and the windows got blown out, and they're just replacing the window just like you would before a storm that's
Yeah,
coming in or
yeah,
something else. Listen, Brian, not everything is dangerous. That's why I always use the analogy about the Heimlich maneuver. If you walk around every day going, I want to go out to eat, but we might be robbed and raped at the Texas Roadhouse, you're not going to have any fun with life. What you have to do is you have to start assessing from the plan. What are we going to eat? Where are we going to eat? Where are we going to go? Where are we going to park? We're going to do all those other things. And once you're inside a venue like that, if you see a sketchy situation, one, say something. on your way out. Dial 911 and be heading for the exit. We know not to hide in the bathroom. That's not going to work. Look at all the historical examples of that. And lately, you've had this spate of people that have been found with weapons caches near public events, near races, or near concerts, or near all those other things. Brian, one of those is going to light off, and it's not going to be fun. So you're responsible for saying, why are those people in the booth not looking at the show? You know, who's unloading those wooden crates and all that stuff. And Brian, if you don't want to do that, then don't go. Stay home, order in, and enjoy life. But I would much rather be that witness than the person that's going to get first person involved. I really would.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a good place to sort of wrap the conversation, and understanding about, how we all have, man, we all have our own orbit of people around us that
We
we
certainly do.
interact with. And so when you pull up to that gas station pump, and the guy or girl who pulls up on the other side of it, like, you have to wonder who else is, who else are they affiliated with, and
Absolutely.
is that, interaction going to happen right here? Is he, is that guy hooking up with some girl who's married, and her husband just found out about it, and that's him following him in here, and there's going to be a confrontation? I mean, that spills over into you, and you're just trying to get
Yep.
gas. And I think that's an important part. And I continue to reiterate gas stations, because I swear they're the most dangerous places on the face of the earth, statistically.
Slow time down. Okay. Life is about slowing down, smelling the coffee, enjoying the roses, all that other hyperbole. But at the end of the day, Brian, it's going to keep you safer. It's going to make you smarter and harder to kill.
Well, thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget, we can always check out more on our Patreon site, and follow us on Instagram. And if you enjoyed the podcast, share it with your friends. All that stuff, we appreciate it. If you can, scroll down and give us a review. That'd be awesome. And always reach out to us at leftofgreg@gmail.com. We can always answer some questions, and kind of go from there. I think that'll be an interesting perspective to take. I know we got into a little bit of, you know the analogies were plenty in this episode, but
Yep.
they're good ways, I think, to look at it and understand a situation. And my thing is too, Greg, if someone is telling you, oh, this is the answer in that situation,
We need to go look for
yeah,
another dojo, Brian.
yeah, you need to say, hey,
There is no rigid answer.
if someone says, hey, this is a potential solution in a situation like that, I like
Yep.
that wording a little bit better,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because there is no, it's not, none of these situations are ever binary, right? They're never a yes or no. You influence the situation that you're in. So how do you want to influence that situation? How do you want to
Correct.
influence the orbit you're in and the one you're going into? Because that's going to determine the outcome much better than some very simple answer to a complex situation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and don't forget that training changes behavior.